welcome to episode 10 of Talking Politics here at The Hindu with me, Nistula Hebbar, where we unpack the news that's making the headlines in domestic politics this week. This week was about kicking off poll preparations for the 2022 poll cycle. A large number of states, from Uttar Pradesh to Punjab, Uttarakhand, Goa, Manipur, earlier in the year, and then later in the year, Gujarat and Himachal Pradesh are set to go to polls. The BJP, never one to allow the grass to grow under its feet, where poll preparation has been concerned, was first off the block. In almost all the states going into polls next year, with the exception of Punjab, the BJP will be defending its state governments and hoping to return to power. There are many of those who feel that state assembly elections are discrete contests in themselves and have no larger implications beyond that particular contest. But there are others who feel that this 2022 poll cycle, especially in Uttar Pradesh, will be a referendum on the Narendra Modi government and its handling of the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. Since general elections are far away, many feel that the electorate might take this advantage of conveying a message to the central government and to other political parties. As we are taping this episode of Talking Politics, BJP President JP Nadda has called a two-day meeting of National General Secretaries to talk about the road ahead in terms of poll preparations and certain other programs that the party will undertake in order to be among the people for the second COVID-19 pandemic wave. Even before this meeting was called, he had dispatched BJP General Secretary Organization BL Santosh to both Uttarakhand and Uttar Pradesh for a stock-taking exercise. Mr. Santosh, along with Party Prabhari for Uttar Pradesh, former Union Minister Radha Mohan Singh, held meetings at different levels in Lucknow, from party workers to leaders to even ministers in the Yogi Adityanath government. That's because the issues that the BJP has to deal with in Uttar Pradesh are layered and manifold. Even before the second wave of COVID-19 hit Uttar Pradesh, there were lots of murmurs of protest and resentment against Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath from among his party colleagues and his council of ministers. Their main grouse was that the chief minister relied on a small group of bureaucrats to carry out his administration's main work, sidelining people's representatives, elected representatives, party workers, and basically carving his own path forward. The bureaucrats were accused of being tone deaf with regard to what public service was required, and was also accused of acting like a coterie, insulating the chief minister from the demands of the public. The COVID-19 pandemic exacerbated this kind of resentment against the chief minister, with 4 MLAs and 1 union Minister for Labour, Santosh Gangwar, who represents Bareilly in Western Uttar Pradesh in the Lok Sabha, having written to the chief minister saying that his administration's handling of COVID-19 was inadequate. The party organization and its chief, Swatantra Dev Singh, also came under fire from the party, now facing a lot of resentment from the public at large for being more or less absent from the ground when the second wave was at its height. There was a feeling that the party could have done more in terms of being available to people to help them in accessing health resources, etc., etc. All of these things were conveyed to Mr. B.L. Santosh, who in turn also conveyed them to the chief minister when he met him in Lucknow. All of this feedback has now been carried back to party president JP Nadda, who seems to have taken a call that the optics of removing either the chief minister or the party president just a few months before the elections would look worse than removing them just to quieten a few murmurs of protest or murmurs of protest within the own party. In all of this, an interesting sidelight was provided by the activities of former bureaucrat turned BJP MLC, Mr. A.K. Sharma, who, after having served in the Narendra Modi-run CMO in Gujarat and PMO in New Delhi, took early retirement and a plunge into politics. When he arrived on the scene in Uttar Pradesh, much was expected of him. He was seen as some sort of a super politician well versed in what it requires to get infrastructure projects off the ground in states like Uttar Pradesh, having handled the portfolio in the PMO as Joint Secretary onwards, and to kind of fix some of the bottlenecks that were plaguing infrastructure projects in Uttar Pradesh. His reception by Yogi Adityanath, the Chief Minister of the state, was rather cold and remained cold till the second wave of the pandemic hit. At that time, the Prime Minister, fearing that matters were going out of hand even in his parliamentary constituency of Varanasi, tasked Mr. Sharma to set up a common command and control center there and to try and bring things under control. Numbers were rampaging even in Varanasi and eastern Uttar Pradesh, which is not very well covered, and that's an understatement, through medical resources, etc., was a very big problem area for the government. Mr. Sharma did the job and came in for some praise for having managed things well. Last heard, Mr. Sharma had been asked to meet with Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath and also help bureaucrats in the state and walk them through the command and COVID command and control center that he had set up in Varanasi and replicated for various districts. Now that's where that particular story stands. But what of the strategy to face polls 9 months on, when there is so much of anger and resentment among the people? Well, that is where party president JP Nadda has squarely put the task before the party, saying that there will be no shifting in the organization, at least no large scale at the moment, till some of the resentment faced by the people was addressed squarely. And therefore, party workers and leaders have been asked to go to the public, stand by them, do all the things that were not done at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, and actively participate in the vaccination program, which has been set out by the UP government, to hear people out and also hope against hope that the collective memory of having faced the second wave of the pandemic with a floundering administration doesn't lead to a payback next year in electoral terms. Uttar Pradesh and the road to the next election will be a living story till that election, and probably even after that election has packed up, with lots of political lessons. We are leaving the story at this point, however, and I will see you next week.